Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today on our LinkedIn Live. We are going to have a conversation about workplace mental health, NAMI StigmaFree Workplace. My name is Meg Delp. I am the Director of Workplace Mental Health at NAMI, and I'm going to pass it over to my co-host today, Brit.
Hello, I'm Brit Wanstrath, NAMI StigmaFree Workplace Manager. And today we thought it would be helpful to do something a little different and answer some of the most common questions we get during all of our trainings and presentations and the conversations that we have with employers. So I know I personally got really interested in workplace mental health after I experienced some really severe burnout. I actually remember going to my very first therapy session and saying to my therapist, I don't even care if I feel better. I just need to stop crying at work because it's embarrassing. It's like obviously now I know that I had that backwards. You need to take care of the mental health condition before you could stop the crying. But I was like, maybe there's just a pill for it. I'd never been in a job where people talked about things like burnout or depression. I just didn't really know anything about it. And I thought what was wrong with me was that I just wasn't as good at hiding it as everyone else. But it was early in my career and I really just didn't know. So that's why, to me, it's always really important to start with just that very first step, getting up the courage to just ask what you don't know.
Absolutely. Britt, thank you for sharing your story. I know there are just so many who so get how you felt. It is a common story. And honestly, it's why this work is so important to me as well, how I ended up here. For almost a decade, I was a therapist trying to help folks live their best lives, learn skills to care for their mental health, build healthy relationships. But for many of those clients, we kept running into the same problem. Their workplaces just were not places where they could actually sustain a healthy lifestyle. So, all the skills, the knowledge, the working on themselves, it just couldn't go anywhere. So, I got more and more frustrated. Using that frustration, I started down the organizational psychology road to see if I might be able to figure this out from the top down. So rather than, continuing to try to help individuals thrive in places that just weren't built for it, figure out how to make places that wanted employees to thrive, that knew how to help employees thrive. And NAMI Stigma Free is my way to do that. And it just means so much that we have partners already doing that work with us. At NAMI National, we work with organizations from all industries, and honestly, many of the same questions come up again and again with our partners, with folks we talk to on our presentation. So today, as Britt mentioned, we're going to tackle just a few frequently asked questions, share some practical tips, and hopefully make workplace mental health conversations feel just a little more approachable.
Yes, and also we want to share a little bit about our annual workplace mental health survey, third year in a row, and a newer training that we are very, very excited about called You Can Ask by NAMI.
All right, fabulous. Let's dive in. Starting with the basics, Britt, in your own words, what exactly is NAMI Stigma Free Workplace?
Yes, NAMI StigmaFree Workplace is an initiative that's focused on helping organizations to create mentally healthy workplace cultures. Every company is different, and the workday is going to vary a lot depending on your industry or your department, or even whether you're on the day shift or the night shift. So we really want people to feel empowered to find the solutions that work best for them. We could come up with all kinds of ideas and talk all day about different things that you could do, but no one's going to know what to do as well as you do because you're in the situation and you know how much capacity and energy and power you have. So we really want to focus from our end on things like education and trainings, leadership engagement, we love building joint resources together. And then we also really like to share all of the newest trends and data with our network. So, really everyone feels confident to explore options and come up with these mental health conversations and all the best practices, just knowing what they need to say, when to say it, and feeling confident that, they don't have to be exactly perfect to make a difference.
For sure. And one thing we always like to clarify with everyone is that this work is not about turning anyone into a therapist at work. No one has time for that. That's not the expectation. We don't even advise bringing up anything clinical at all. It is truly just about building that mental health awareness. We are reducing that mental health stigma, we're improving communication and helping people know how to respond to their colleagues supportively and connect folks to resources. Our wonderful HR departments do such great work finding us all of these benefits and resources and mental health apps. And according to our last 3 surveys, awareness of benefits is sadly quite low. And so making sure people know what they have access to so that they actually use it is a great step. So we also often hear that people don't quite know how to get started with checking in on a colleague, so they just never do. And we want to change that. So knowing that taking that first step can feel intimidating for many, it really honestly just shows your colleague that you care and want to support them. Like Britt said, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, and that's a great point because you can just be a good listener. You don't have to have all of the exact words. You don't need to be an expert, of course. We work with businesses that are at very different stages as well. So, a lot of the businesses we work with are really just beginning this conversation, while others have been doing this work and are showing up. And, we want to make sure that we can help them keep their momentum up so that they can stay really competitive as a company that has a clear social mission. That's so important in this modern age, particularly with Gen Z as they are entering the workforce. They're really looking for organizations that have the proof that they can walk what they talk.
Absolutely. I just had some great conversations with our NAMI Next Gen panel or advisory council on a panel, and they said the same thing. They want workplaces that show that they care about their employees. They want them to be well and healthy and sustainable. So it really does matter. So, one of the main questions we hear from companies, from folks, is just how do we actually get people to talk about mental health at work?
Right. I mean, we hear from so many organizations that say things like, we have all of these resources and nobody is using them. People don't even know about them. Or they'll say that, they think that they're keeping the conversation open for mental health, but for some reason, people just aren't comfortable talking about it. No one talks about it. So, yeah, that's a big issue, and it's a really great question.
Yeah, and when we think about company culture, silence around a specific topic is actually a really key indicator of how that culture is doing. Employees really pay attention to whether leaders talk about mental health, if their managers know how to respond supportively, if managers are getting trained on how to respond supportively, and whether people just feel psychologically safe, which honestly can differ team to team, even within the same company. But if the culture doesn't support mental health and the mental health conversation, the assumption is often that it's not actually safe to talk about mental health. Brief note on psychological safety. It is, quite the buzzword these days. What it means is really that people feel like they can come to work as themselves. They can be open, they can be honest, while also ensuring that we maintain respect for our colleagues, we're upholding our own boundaries, respecting other people's boundaries. But it's really creating that space where we can take steps into discomfort without fear of judgment or punishment, even. And this directly ties to mental health because if we don't feel like we are safe to be honest about how we're feeling, we're just not going to share or ask for support.
Yeah, that's very true. And another thing that we always talk about with our partners is consistency. So a single awareness month post or talking about benefits once a year during, open enrollment or when you have a new hire, it's fantastic. But what you're really trying to do is build trust. We obviously know here the average delay between when someone starts to notice these concerning mental health condition symptoms and when they actually start to seek treatment, it's 11 years. And it's likely in that time that people have heard this message now and then. I know I certainly had. But what makes it feel like a manageable step to actually look at your mental health resources and evaluate how you're actually really doing, it's making it routine. It's just a part of the regular conversation you have at your business.
100%. Employees notice ongoing behaviors. So, asking yourself these questions about your own workplace, do leaders normalize conversations? And if you're a leader, are you open about mental health? Things like acknowledging stressful quarters out loud to the company or lots of impact from organizational change. What means the most to folks is that transparency. It's saying, I know this is having an impact. I know we are stressed, and it's okay to feel that way. Let's talk about it and figure it out together. Also noticing, do managers check in regularly with their teams and really check in? And if you are that manager, do you feel like you know how to do that? Have you gotten trained on how to really show up for your team? We also want to notice, are boundaries respected? Things like actually signing off at the end of your workday, not checking in during vacations, being able to have up those guardrails to really ensure that you can engage with work in a healthy way. And finally, is well-being discussed proactively, not just after crises, not just after, like Brit said, like during open enrollment, awareness month, is this a consistent message? Are we being proactive?
Right. And, also, we always like to remind people that small actions really matter. I think we've all been in a situation where you start a conversation and someone's just like, hey, how are you? Good? Okay, let's go to work. And they don't really give you the pause to actually say, wait, how am I? We just really want people to think about how much different your answer would be if somebody actually took a second to take that pause and just physically, how are you really doing today? And, for this to work, there also needs to be space for an honest answer. So, not just jumping in with solutions, but just listening and acknowledging what they're going through, just making the space, just the physical space and time for somebody to have a moment to really think to themselves, how am I doing? Also just, I always want to remind people to thank the person for sharing with you, because it is a huge leap of faith to tell someone when you're having a hard time. And it's just a beautiful thing when you have that kind of trusted relationship.
It is so true. And it can take time and, like we've been saying, consistency. So maybe it's asking that question, providing that pause a few times before you get that real answer, but continuing to provide that space, it just goes such a long way. And this gets into our next frequently asked question: what if I say the wrong thing?
Right. Yeah, that's another huge one, especially for managers. We hear all the time people are worried they'll say something that's accidentally stigmatizing, or, especially in the workplace, you really get into things like confidentiality, like just those kinds of scary legal words.
Absolutely. And, people also really worry that they're going to make things worse or say the wrong thing. And so then they just avoid the conversation altogether. But we know from literal data that silence is stigmatizing and it is just not helpful. So it can often feel a lot heavier than if someone hears just imperfect words. And so, never expecting anyone to have the perfect words. There probably aren't perfect words ever because everyone is so unique and different. We really just want to help our colleagues start to feel seen, heard, and simply not alone in what they are carrying. NAMI is all about spreading that message of you are not alone. So in the workplace, we want to create that culture where people feel comfortable checking in, they're asking honest questions, and then expecting honest answers. We are responding without judgment, and we're seeing that difference in the culture as people start to say, I need support. Okay, let's support this person. Let's look at priorities. Let's look at workload. And now all of a sudden, that person has the support that they need to be their best selves, and everyone benefits. And we also know that sometimes support starts with something super, super simple, like, I've noticed you don't seem like yourself lately. How are you doing?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, basically it's just about making checking in and learning about your resources and everything boring. Because, for the person who has never reached out for help before, this is a monumental step in their lives. So if everything else is as boring as possible, I think that's kind of where you can find like the safest harbor. But that actually also reminds me of our new free online training, You Can Ask by NAMI. So, this was kind of the inspiration for this training we put together. We wanted to address those more intimidating aspects of talking about mental health in the workplace. I always love this idea in mental health treatment, no wrong door. And I think this training is really going to help people see what we mean when we say that. You just need to listen and be ready with support. You're not the place where treatment and healing happens. You are there to be the door to that place. So people can come to you and you will know how to direct them to where they need to go.
Absolutely. And especially if that door happens to be to your local NAMI affiliate or state organization where there is free mental health support and education, please do find your local NAMI and offer it as a resource to those colleagues. Uh, Back to the training. We are very excited about the training because it focuses on helping people feel more confident starting the conversation. And because it is story based and interactive, it's way more engaging than your typical training. So, throughout the training, you'll learn basically the arc of a supportive and appropriate workplace mental health conversation.
Yes, and I have our little list of goals right here. So, what we want to do is have people learn how to recognize the difference between a bad day and an actual mental health concern, ask supportive questions, listen without judgment, and respond with empathy, and learn where to go to connect someone to support. So, again, just that idea of being there, being the place where someone can go to learn where to go next.
Absolutely. And just to continue taking the pressure off, it is not about becoming a mental health professional. It is simply helping people feel prepared and less afraid to really engage in those human to human conversations. Uh, Breaking down mental health stigma means taking the first step in normalizing mental health, and we all have a role to play. If we wait for someone else to do it, it might never happen. And so being that person can be a really courageous step.
Yeah, That's a beautiful way to think about it. And thanks for giving me my little caveat to talk about. You can ask because I'm very excited. So if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and do the next one of our FAQs. How do we know if our workplace culture is improving?
So, this is where data listening really matters. NAMI StigmaFree Workplace is all about hearing directly from employees who are in workplaces across the US. Every year, for 3 years, we gather nationally representative insights from employees across industries who work for large companies to better understand a myriad of things like workplace stressors, burnout, manager support, comfort levels, discussing mental health and why they might not be comfortable. Things like stigma, always a top reason why. And then finally, we try to really understand what employees actually want from their employers.
Yeah, and anybody who has heard me talk about this before, one of the things that we always find with our survey is the overwhelming majority of people want to talk about mental health. They trust their managers, they're ready to jump in when a coworker is struggling. But then we ask if you've ever actually told your manager that you're having a hard time. We see 53% of people say that they're burned out, and very few people are actually telling their manager that. So, it's just a very different story when it's about us. So, what we really want to do is help organizations move beyond those assumptions that just because you've got great resources and you give people an hour for lunch and, there's a foosball table in the break room, employees may still not feel comfortable using them. That actually reminds me of a friend of mine. He worked at a company and they got a massage chair to help people relax, but they put it like in the middle of the office, just like amongst all the desks. So like if you wanted to use it, everybody's just sitting there watching you, and it was just so awkward that no one touched it. So my point with that story is that it's not enough to provide benefits. You have to make it actually safe to use them.
I think that is a perfect story, Britt, and it super highlights that we need to really be thoughtful about how we are providing resources. Um, and we do see one consistent theme. Employees want authentic support, not performative support. And while we can provide the nationally representative data, which we'll do again year over year, it's important that every company looks at their own employee population. Who is the population that is struggling in their workplace? Do you know how many caregivers you have? Do you know what the different struggles are based on shift work or based on department or team? We want to provide first anonymous access to feedback. We want to do employee engagement surveys, but we want to create the space and the culture where it's actually safe to provide that honest feedback, because it's not enough to just say, I want to hear it. It has to be safe to actually then receive that information and then do something with it. And that can be a hard journey, but
Yeah, don't
really
put the
having
massage
that.
chair in the middle of the office.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So I see we're running kind of low on time. Do you want to just kind of do some rapid fire with our last few questions here?
Let's do it.
Okay. Can workplace mental health conversations actually improve retention?
Yes. Employees are more likely to stay at their job when they feel supported, valued, psychologically safe, and not burned out. Question for you, Britt. Do managers need formal mental health expertise?
No. Managers and therapists are different jobs. So managers do need awareness and empathy and communication skills. Those are all very important. And they also need clarity around resources and the professional boundaries that so that they can properly support everyone on the team without worrying about doing too much or too little. So regular training is very important, which, in my completely unbiased opinion, NAMI Stigma-Free Workplace does very well. So thank you for that question. um, can I ask you, is burnout just an individual issue?
Absolutely not. Burnout is actually much more connected to the workplace system. So, the workload, expectations, the company culture, all of those things go into whether or not an employee is going to have sustainable well being at work. And so, we can't assume prevention or recovery is an individual experience to manage. Can, for you, Britt, can small organizations do this work too?
Yes, absolutely. So culture is shaped by people, not company size. And many of our NAMI state organizations and local affiliates are doing this work too. They're amazing to work with wherever you are. If you look up nami.org/local, you can learn more about the NAMI that's in your community. And that NAMI is not just in your community, it's run by the people in your community. So these are your friends, they're your neighbors. This is a great way to get connected if you're looking for a way to get more connected with your community. Um, I would love to ask you, what is a mistake that organizations often make?
I would say treating mental health as a one time campaign instead of ongoing culture commitment. We talked about it a little bit, but we really want to see mental health over and over and over again throughout the year so people feel actually safe to talk about mental health.
Perfect. Well, look at that. We made it through our questions. This has been such a great conversation.
Absolutely. And to everyone who is here, we really hope that we helped make mental health conversations feel a little more practical, a little more approachable.
Yeah, and if you would like to learn more about NAMI Stigma Free Workplace, our annual survey findings, fascinating. Or if you want to try out our new free NAMI training, you can ask by NAMI. Feel free to reach out. We've got our contact form on the Stigma Free site. And you can reach out to our email. It's us. If you reach out, you'll be talking to one of us.
Absolutely. Stigmafree.nami.org or stigmafree@nami.org. Please look us up. We have so many free resources, including our training. If you have any workplace mental health questions you'd like us to answer in the future, or topics you'd like us to cover for our future LinkedIn Live sessions, please drop them in the comments. And just thank you everyone for joining us today and for being part of the conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today, Britt.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was great talking with you.